All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're exploring a wildly bold, honestly kind of subversive social concept. Just imagine a society completely devoid of managers, organizational charts, or, well, anyone giving orders. Sounds like a chaotic utopia, right? But this is actually the core philosophy stemming from Life Shan founder Guy Zifeng. He envisions a world entirely without management, and he's putting it to the test in a community known as the Second Home. So you might be wondering, how does a system with absolutely no bosses actually function? Let's dive straight into Guy Zifeng's paradox and his vision for a world without management.
Okay, let's dive into this first section, a world without management.
Guy Zifeng poses a really direct challenge to the very idea of human authority. Listen to this. He asks, Life Genuine is not an organization. Who would dare claim they are so perfect as to manage others? It's a pretty piercing question, honestly. If every single human is flawed, isn't it kind of arrogant to give one flawed person power over another? This essentially forms the psychological bedrock for completely rejecting traditional management.
Now, if humans aren't managing each other, where on earth does order come from? Well, the answer lies in what's called the natural path. This philosophy dictates that everything is actually already perfectly managed by the Tao. Think about the orbit of stars or the changing of the seasons. Therefore, according to this view, unnecessary human management isn't just redundant. It literally deviates from this natural harmony. It disrupts things.
Moving right along, let's look at Section 2, Civilization 2 versus 3.
And this brilliantly illustrates how Guy Zifeng categorizes human history to justify this radical shift. He views our current era, Civilization 2.0, as the management era. In this narrative, management just breeds power struggles, bureaucracy, corruption, and outright oppression. In contrast, his utopian promise for Civilization 3.0 completely eradicates management. Instead, it's replaced by perfect order and pure service, totally free from any coercion.
Behind all this contrast is one absolutely foundational belief. Power is one of the sources of all evils. In this theory, wherever you have management, you have power over others, and power guarantees degeneration. That is exactly why Life Shan strictly, across the board, forbids anyone from holding dominion over another person.
Which brings us to the core paradox of our explainer in Section 3, the rule of 800 values.
800. Let that massive number sink in for a second. That is the sheer volume of Chenyan values that step in to replace traditional human management. Instead of relying on a manager's subjective will or mood on any given day, Life Genuine utilizes an exhaustive, unalterable rulebook, so management hasn't really vanished, it's just morphed from the rule of people into a highly complex rule of totally transparent values.
So, how does this framework operate autonomously? Well, it starts with a voluntary choice to enter the community. But once you're in, Step 2 demands absolute adherence. You must uphold the 800 Chongyuan values, no exceptions. Step 3 is where the autonomous part kicks in. You don't wait for a boss to tap you on the shoulder and tell you what to do. You simply continue living based solely on following these strictly defined procedures.
Now, what's really interesting about this is just how uncompromising these procedures are. For instance, members are strictly forbidden from forming any special, emotional, or interest-based relationships. No cliques, no special bonds. Basically, in this system's logic, special relationships disrupt overall fairness. If you violate this strict boundary, you practically guarantee your own elimination from the community.
All right, let's get into the day-to-day reality for a Chanyuan Celestial in Section 4, Surviving the Second Home.
The directive here is, well, it's intense, bordering on ruthless, honestly. Compassion for those who seek comfort and avoid labor is cruelty toward those who work diligently. Life Shan is definitely not a sanctuary for anyone looking to lay low. There is a zero-tolerance policy for anyone hoping to just live an easy life without throwing in equal effort.
Which brings us to the daily, totally unbending requirement. You cannot be a mere enjoyer, you have to be a pioneer. Every single day, as long as you're breathing, you are required to create more value for the home than you receive from it. Your very presence is justified solely by your continuous, active contribution.
But what happens if you falter? This is where the managerless system reveals its most cold and impersonal side. In a normal job, maybe an illness, being tight with your boss, or just having years of loyal service might protect you. Not here. Illness, pitiful circumstances, close relationships with guides, amazing past contributions, long years as a member, or even your ability to spread Chenyan values, literally none of these will save you from elimination if you repeatedly violate the 800 values.
You can probably imagine the psychological toll this kind of environment demands. You can't just wait around for tasks, you have to be relentlessly proactive. You cannot crave comfort, yet, and actually this is the real razor's edge. Even if you are extraordinarily capable, you absolutely cannot act beyond the roadmap laid out by the guide. Step out of those bounds and you're eliminated. It's a constant tightrope walk between extreme proactivity and absolute submission.
This really brings the narrative full circle. Guide Shuafeng condenses his entire operational philosophy into one single sentence. Life Chen Yuan no longer advocates management, it advocates service. In his view, relying on 800 cold principles, strict elimination, and an absolute roadmap isn't management at all, it is a transparent framework of pure service, totally stripped of personal will.
So what does this all mean? It leaves us with a pretty profound question to consider. Can a society truly be free of management if it demands absolute submission to an unshakable systemic roadmap of 800 unyielding rules? I mean, is replacing a human boss with a rigid, non-negotiable framework the ultimate path to freedom? Or is it simply a more absolute, inescapable form of management? We'll leave that for you to decide. Thanks so much for joining us on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.